who you are and what you want to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. Oh, someone's calling in from Lake Merritt. It's my neighbor over here. I don't know. Hi, Joe. My name is Josh Levine. I am an author, educator, and sometime consultant, and I think and write a lot about company culture. I actually come from a brand strategy background, think a lot about design, and so I actually interlace the two things, brand approach or a design thinking approach and culture. And so last year published a book called Great Mondays. Does it look correct to you? Is it flipped around? Because it looks reversed to me.
It's okay.
It's okay to you?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, Great Mondays. Anyways, how to design a company culture employees love. Because I had when I first started thinking about company culture over a decade ago, there was a big challenge in that not a lot of people understood what it was and how to define it, and then there was like, well, what do I do about company culture? Like, how do I actually do it? Because people, at least here in the Bay Area, was like, oh, we're just going to install a cold brew machine and some ping pong and we'll have culture. So now luckily we've advanced beyond that, and so my book really goes through the 6 components of company culture to help organizations understand the framework, some of the levers that they can start to pull, and that's actually what I wanted to start with. So if we want to jump right in, I'm happy to do it. Just need to share my screen, and I can show you a little bit of something. Let's see if we can find it.
If you hover over your face on screen, you should
check that out. Look at that.
Perfect. Let me minimize me down. Yeah, I'll minimize us both down actually, and we'll focus on that. Perfect.
All right, perfect. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say is I wanted to give everybody a quick look at the 6 components. It's a cycle, and there's a lot to go into. Obviously, I've written an entire book. I've got a ton of stuff on my website, greatmondays.com. So if there's something we don't get into today, and you want more information about it, go to the website, grab a copy of the book. Audiobook's available, or ping me on LinkedIn. Always happy to talk about it. So let's just start with the 6 components, and then we're going to talk about what we need to, or what I've been thinking about given the current status. So I'm going to zoom in here. So these are the 6 components: purpose, values, behaviors, recognition, rituals, and cues. All right. So purpose and values and behaviors, that's how you design or think about or aspire to your culture. Okay. Purpose is the North Star. Why are you in business beyond making money? We'll get back to that in a second. That's one of the big levers we need to start pulling on a little bit harder now. Values, right? Those are the guardrails. So if I just say that's the point and you don't have any guardrails, you may go off the trail. You may start to try to cheat, exhibit bad behavior. So we need values to say what's the right direction. And then the whole reason we're talking about culture in the first place, it's about behaviors. Behaviors are why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to get everybody to act in a way that benefits themselves, their organization, and their company. Then once we've defined that, we actually have to operationalize it. And we're going to do that through recognition, rituals, and cues. Not getting into that today, but that's actually how we activate it, how we get people to start behaving in that way, because just because you put it up on the wall doesn't mean people are going to change. As a matter of fact, it takes a lot of effort to get people to start behaving in a brand new way. So that I'll leave this up here for a few more seconds, and then we'll go back to just me talking, because I don't want to do a whole bunch of slides. I just wanted to kind of preview this. So one of the reasons why I got into culture, started thinking about culture, was because I spent a lot of time as a brand strategist making these value propositions, making these promises, these brand promises, but felt like people on the inside weren't actually delivering on these promises. And so that's where I really wanted to start to focus on how to help organizations deliver on those brand values. Now, as I dug into and think about culture, I realized that why culture is becoming so important, right? Like, why have we seen, like, over the past, probably you started to hear it about 5-6 years ago, and now it's all over the place. The reason is because things are moving so fast. So one of the things I like to say is at one point it used to be that culture change was an event, right? Like you're like, oh, I need to enter a new market. Oh, I need to restructure the organization. Oh, we need to do something different. And it was like, we're going to do that next year. And then that happened and you probably got a new title or something, and then it was on your way. Now culture change is a constant. And so what I feel like culture is really important because we live in such a crazy world. I think probably most people know the term VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? You can't really do any projections anymore. You can pretend to think that you know what's going to happen. But what we obviously are now in like a hyper accelerated world, VUCA. And so what we have to think about is empowering our employees to make better decisions and can't manage the way that we used to do it anymore. We have to use culture. We have to use purpose and values to determine a certain set of behaviors so that I can actually consider how to guide people. We hire great people to do amazing things. And this is the rule book we play by. This is the rule book we play by. So now, how do we change now that everything has changed? So there's two things that I've been thinking about. The first is what is your new place in the world? Okay. We have never lived through anything like this, and we never will. Purpose, in my book, I say purpose will never change or rarely change. Well, obviously I was wrong. Purpose is something that I feel is really important. It is the North Star of your business. It's why you're in business beyond making money. Let's see if I can remember a few examples. Credit Karma just went public to help people be their best financial selves. Starbucks, whether you like them or not, their purpose is to inspire people, inspire the world, one person, one cup, one person, one neighborhood at a time. And there's just a lot of power in a well-articulated purpose statement. But now the question becomes, are we still relevant? Or is there like, I think about myself as an employee. If I were at one of these companies and I go to work, or I don't go to work, I turn on work and I'm like, what am I doing here? Am I just selling widgets? Like people are dying. There's this incredible urgency, and it just feels so important that we have to rethink about what it is that we're doing in our work. And I thought that there was like 3 different kinds of situations that you might be in. So in one situation, if you're lucky enough to work in a company where the service, product, deliverable value has become more relevant, then your job, and you need, as a leader, need to step up and say, we have the benefit now. We can help. So I'm thinking about Zoom, right? So we're all getting very familiar with Zoom. So the CEO, Eric, said, K through 12 organizations, you get the product for free. They've basically taken their purpose of like connecting people and like just cranked it up to 11. Right? Like that's what they're doing. One of my former clients, PagerDuty, they have a platform to help organizations make sure that their website isn't overloaded. Maybe you might need, maybe Crowdcast needs that because you guys went down this apparently. And they said, if you're a nonprofit or a public service provider, we're going to provide our service to you for free. I think that's a great example. And then also the Google and Apple example of them coming together to do a contact tracing application. That I think is a really great, wonderful way to think about that, right? So their purpose is like, essentially they're taking their idea and kind of cranking it up. Then there's wow, we're not really relevant anymore. We need to pivot. We need to think about how do we start to change what we're doing? How do we do it in a new way? What is it that we can do, and how do we provide that? So I keep thinking about the distillery that's making hand sanitizer. I think about my local, right? My local pub. Basically, it's takeout only, And if you bring your own cup, they'll give you a pint of beer for free, and you get to chat with the guy for a second, right? Like, and I feel like those kinds of things there's some really interesting opportunities where, and I'm not, I don't know that the distillery is going to continue to make hand sanitizer once the panic is over, but I feel like there's this big opportunity to consider a new place in the world. And we need to really look hard. And I'm not saying your purpose has to change, but I think there's a major realignment that has to happen. And then I think there's companies in the middle that don't know where they are. And I think this is the dangerous spot, which is like cut, retrench, and hope to survive. If you're just doing that, I think you're wasting the opportunity. You might survive, but what you haven't done is in the first and the second case, right? Either you're more applicable or you're irrelevant and you have to pivot. You're creating value for your employees by creating a purpose in the moment, re-energizing them. And you're also creating value for your community, the world on the outside. And that, I end my book talking about culture not just being about employees, but in the future, we're going to see organizations think about how to cultivate the culture of their communities. And so when you have this moment of stepping forward and saying, whether I have the capacity, right? We're doing great business, says Zoom. We're going to invest more money, or we're going to give away a product for free, or holy crap, like what can I do as this one, person pub? What can I offer? I love that interaction, right? I'm telling you this story. Like, I'm going to go back to this guy and I'm like, I'm going to go and support him. So to me, those are the things. If you're in the middle, that's the muddy middle. And I think that's a problem, because you're like, I'm just not going to spend any money. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to try to help, try to just make it through. I posted yesterday on LinkedIn about Marriott, doing some not so awesome things, right? Furloughs. I know that organizations do have to fire people, but at Marriott, they essentially laid off a ton of staff, and then the board approved like a CEO cash raise or something stupid like that, right? Where it's like, at this moment, we need to be thinking about, what can we provide? Is it the people who clean the rooms at Marriott? Like, what can you provide for them? Is it like people that will come back and stay with you? Like, can you, here in San Francisco, there's a major outbreak of the virus amongst homeless people. And the city's trying to work with hotels to get them rooms so that they can be safe. Marriott would be a perfect example of that, if they could step forward and do that. And so sorry,
go ahead. I was going to say, didn't Airbnb do something, and they basically stepped in after actually a period of them having some bad PR, because they were not refunding cancellations based on COVID crisis and so on. But they've suddenly said, okay, listen, we're going to use the resources we do have to house emergency workers, or house the street people and so on. Is that right?
I haven't read. I mean, there's so much news. I hope you're right. I know it's right here in my backyard, so we will. I will absolutely look at that. So this is, to me, when I think about your culture and how you need to respond. The good news and the bad news. The good news and the bad news. The takeaway is that even after the virus, things are not going to slow down. You're going to need to pivot. Every organization is going to need to think about their employees. All the new challenges. This is an entirely new world. And so we need to be, as an organization, not just thinking about the bottom line. That's obviously true, but we need to take that leadership roundtable promise that maybe an organization like Marriott isn't delivering on, of stakeholders, not just shareholders, and really take that to heart. And so we take that idea, how do we improve the lives of our employees? How do we improve the lives of our customers? How do we improve the lives of people who aren't our customers? Maybe in the future they will be. That's what we need to be thinking about at this time. Now, there's no excuse right now. And if we can use this moment to really step up, then maybe when this is all over, we can continue to do some of these amazing things and provide that kind of value to all of the people that surround our organization. So that's ultimately what I think, when I'm observing for the last 2 weeks what's been happening. It is really all about coming to terms with how do we as an organization provide value for people and enable them to make better choices, right? I started by saying culture is about behaviors. My definition is it's the cause and effect of everything we do. The cause and effect of everything we do. Guess what? The virus is that is absolutely inspiring and panicking people to make decisions. So what kind of decisions will you make as a leader? What kind of decisions will you make as a manager? How will you support your peers? How will you support your reports? How will you support other opportunities to support your community? Because that is what's going to be, that's what people are going to remember. What you do now, what a company does now is what is going to define them for the next decade. 100%. I have no question, no doubt in my mind. And so that's why we have to think fast. And that's why we have to really think about a broader definition of culture and think about the pinnacle, the purpose of the organization, and how do you, what you do today actually can be shifted or amplified to help other people.
How do they do that, Josh? Let me ask you a question. Have you encountered in your career, in your consulting, in your interaction with some of these companies, have you encountered an organization that had a culture that the leadership did not want? I don't want to say toxic, but let's say it was not the sort of business that they've somehow ended up with a company that isn't doing what it wants. How do they do the recorrect? Because I think that's like one of those bad habits for a human being, very hard to shift those. So do you have any concepts that may be useful here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this happens. So, yes, I've two examples, right? So one is an organization scales, and then all of a sudden they go, wait, what happened here? When did everybody become an asshole, right? Like that's number one. The other option or the other opportunity that happens, and maybe it's not toxic, it's just not right, which is some sort of acquisition, right? So a lot of companies here acquiring companies. So how do you shift? How do you change things? To me, the real opportunity is for the leader to step up and say, this is what I believe is the right thing to do. And when I say the right thing to do, this is, as a leader, this is what's acceptable. This is what's not acceptable. Because what happens is, no matter if we make it explicit or implicit, you're going to have a culture. And if you have a manager who's succeeding or a salesperson who's succeeding, who's 100% an asshole, right? And it's like, that's the way people see it. That's how you're going to succeed in the organization. So what you need to just define is, how do you want people to behave? So here's my super simple, but not very easy trick. You have to identify your culture all-stars. So when I go in, and I'm an optimist, and I know there's a lot of people that are like, you got to fire the people who are, maybe you do. But my approach is, when I go in and work with an organization, I have the leadership identify the 10, 12, 15 people that if you could replicate them, they will be the future of the organ. They're exactly the kind of organization you want. And the reason this works is because you have the executives nominating the people that they believe are the most, just inherently, they're like the high potentials, or they're not explicit leaders necessarily. They're implicit leaders. They're the people that people want to follow. They just know. The leaders know. But what the leaders don't know is why. They don't quite, like, if you go, and I've done this, where you go work directly with the leaders, and they're like, we want it this way, and we want it that way. And that's fine. But what we really want is their permission to go find the people that are going to be the best examples of your organization. Then we bring those people together, and then depending on what we're doing, purpose, values, recognition, hey, what's the best for this organization? They know. They have contact with the leaders. They have contact with their peers. They're the ones that are going to be the champions of this new culture. And so we use them to identify that. Let's say we're working on values, to identify the kinds of behaviors that are acceptable. And that's what we want. That's exactly and then we want to amplify that, and then use them to amplify that. And I love what Jenna is said is culture is what you tolerate, not what's written on the walls. So I think that there's like two ends, when you're like, when you're clipping your video on your iPhone, right? You've got your like two ends, whatever that's called, the bookmarks. You've got the lowest end. What will you tolerate, right? And you don't have to say it very loud. If someone leaves, it's like you can just go, "Hey, that guy, he was fired because he was being a jerk." And guess what? Everybody hears it. And then on the other end, what are the aspirational behaviors? And then you take those and you say, "Oh my God, Joe McCaddy is incredible. She's done this incredible thing. She has this. There is this values-driven behavior that she has done it time and time again, and it is exactly what we want, and we want to celebrate her." Right. And that's how you do that. But before you do that, before you can do that, you have to define what that is. Those are your values. And that's why that work is so important. What's interesting, Hung, and I've done this for 10 years now. 99.999% of the inbound inquiries we get is, can you help us redefine our values? I swear to God, that's it, because that's the lever that you need in order to help organizations change. Now I've gone way beyond your question, but that's it. Culture All Stars is the short answer to your question.
No, but what a great answer. I mean, that's fantastic. And by the way, I want to give the audience some opportunities to ask Josh some questions. So if you have a question for Josh, please do ask it in the Ask Questions feature, because that's where we're going to look to and see what's what. So Josh and I are going to chat for a minute or so more. But if you have a question now, please use that feature and we'll go through them as we've got a little bit more time.
Do I get to see that feature, or are you just going to feed me the questions?
Oh, you know what? I think you can see it. Do you see it as a? You know what?
I see chat. I see a whole thread of chat. Right, chats. Is that where it comes in? Yeah, I don't know.
It should be at the bottom.
I mean, it's okay with me. I want to know where I'm looking. That's all. Ask a question. I see it.
Yeah. You hit that, it'll pop up. But
all right. All right. You'll feed me because I don't see him, so you'll have to tell me.
No worries. You know what? The All Stars is a really good idea to just to have in your mind, because it's one of those things that people, like, we all intuitively know. We sort of know who the critical person is. It's got very little to do with the job title, very little to do with their status in the company. In fact, it's often the most unusual person. It's the office manager sometimes, or it's the person that doesn't fulfill a role that is matched to that person's talents. But you know what? All the information goes through that person, or she's always coming out with the smartest idea. She is the person that does this, that, and the other. Like, how do we kind of track that, I guess? How do we make sure the companies are aware of these people? Because they're not visible on the org chart sometimes.
It's to me. So Will asked the question is, are there common traits? And one of the common, yes and no. Yes and no is the answer. One of the common traits is that they are implicit leaders. People follow them. They're doing the right thing. And that's what I love. That for me, that's what I want. That's the kind of employee I want. Now, look, if you're an employee at Amazon, what is an amazing high potential employee is going to be very different from, what kind of employee might be at Zoom or Microsoft or maybe some retailer or some burger joint, right? Like, that's really different. And so there's going to be a lot of differences, but what the filter that I use is, I basically say to the leadership team, I said, who do you want more of? Who's killing it? Who's doing a great job? Right? That's what you want. That's the kind of, and then you imbue them with that kind of power. You're saying you're the all-star. You're going to be the person that's the representation of that.
Yeah. I think very interesting. And Will's question is super interesting because, is there a common trait? Is there something that makes, is someone universally an all-star, so to speak, context free? Yeah, I think there's probably some key elements that may be true, but also I think context is super important also, because I suspect someone who is a superstar individual in one context may not replicate that in a different context.
What about go laterally? Okay. Are you an all-star? Are you an all-star early on, less than 50 people?
Yeah,
what does
correct
that
as well.
How about 200? How about 500? 5,000? What does that look like? How does that change over time, right? And I think, to me, when I have one of the questions I get asked because of this, like, hey, Josh, can you help us refresh our values question, is how often should we be refreshing our values? I think you should look at them every 2 to 3 years. If you're scaling crazy fast, maybe, I don't know, every year and a half. I'm not saying change it that fast, but I'm saying you got to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that perhaps these written things on the wall don't capture is the dynamism of culture. Of course, it's going to change over time. It's going to change with different personalities in there. And maybe the reason why companies end up with something that's meaningless on the wall is simply because they've matured beyond what was initially written there.
Yeah,
and
that's
they haven't updated it, or they haven't found a mechanism of doing that. So super interesting.
All right, I just answered in the thread what kind of microphone this is.
Okay, was that Laurie Rudiman's question?
Yeah, ATR 2100 Audio Technica, I guess. I don't know. When I started doing podcasts last year, or started participating in podcasts, that I went and found, some unidirectional mics. So there it is, a little tech answer for you too.
Okay, one last question, and this is a question that I've actually miraculously asked whilst I wasn't typing. But it is, okay, Josh, what is your number one cultural leadership motto?
Model. What is my cultural leadership
motto? Sorry, your
motto. Motto. Yeah. I can't tell. You got such a thick accent. What's my leadership motto? Wait, well, I see what you're saying. Someone typed it in for you. What is my culture leadership motto? Culture. I would go back to that culture is the only sustainable competitive advantage in business today. It is the only thing that can't be stolen. It can't be copied, and it is critical and so important for organization because it is all about choices. Businesses are simply decision-making machines, and this is how we're going to help people make better decisions.
Amazing. And what a better way to finish the session. Josh, thank you so much for your time.
Don't forget to get Great Mondays.
Get a hold of it. Can you get that on Amazon?
Amazon, they've got it for like half off. You get the audiobook if you love the sound of my voice, or even if you don't, you can get the audiobook. It's on Kindle. And if you're a cheap bastard, you can just go to my website, greatmondays.com. There's a lot of content there. All the exercises. So the book is actually filled with exercises that you can do. And so that those are all downloadable for free. So you don't even have to buy it. Although I'd love if you would.
Fantastic stuff. Josh Levine, thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge and your humor with us. It's been great having you. I would imagine this would be one of the most popular tracks of the entire marathon. So thank you so much for it. Hope you've had the chance to drop in and see some